hello, listeners. Very glad to be doing this again. We're excited to talk about more Twig. I know it's been a little bit since the last recording. One of our other roundabouters, Tyler, actually jumped into the story, and for a minute we kind of slowed down our pace to see if he might want to catch up and join in on the next recording, which might still happen at some point, but we figured it had been long enough since our Arc 1 talk that we should at least follow up with an Arc 2 and 3. So I'm joined by Willer today.
Hello. Our original plan was to maybe do something chunkier, but in lieu of the recording situation, we're like, okay, let's just jump in and do arcs 2 and 3. It's already been too long, and from this point on, the pace should be better.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm already on arc 5, but I stopped there when Tyler said he was interested in checking the story out. And then I think Bradley also took a break around where he was, which was 3. So I've been like sitting several arcs ahead for a good while now. I've finished like a book and a half in this time because I'm like, okay, I don't want to get too ahead, and that's a good reason because even going over these notes, it's like, oh man, I read this a while ago. So thankfully, I took a bunch of notes to refresh myself on what happens in the story. And how do we want to approach this? Do you want to do like a quick summary of the 2 arcs?
Yeah, I'll do a quick recap. Arc 1 left us with a pretty good first impression of the story, and I think Arcs 2 and 3 also had a lot of good stuff going for them. So Arc 2 kind of came off pretty quick off the tail end of Arc 1, which was at the school. Arc 2, there's kind of this incident growing in their town where this Reverend Mauer is amassing these followers who have grievances against the academy, and they're kind of worried it could turn into riots. And this one's kind of fun because I think actually the head of the academy, Briggs, calls them in to help deal with this. I think he's not as sure about Hale's project as Hale is, and he's like, look, if they can resolve this situation without it turning into a big riot or having to use violence, that's cool. Um, and so they do that. They go to this church and they see Mauer kind of Sai kind of falls in love with him because he's like, oh my god, he's such a good manipulator. Look at how he has all these people wrapped around his finger. And they end up kind of solving that situation where it's a fight that's done through optics kind of rather than combat. They have to create a situation where it looks like this Reverend Mauer has like threatened literal children. Um,
Yeah, we'll get to it.
yeah. But they're able to handle that quite well. And then after that job, there is a kind of there's like a time skip of a few months, which is actually very important for, I think, I'm a couple chapters into Arc 4, and I think the fact that there was a time skip here is kind of important. For Arc 3, at the start of Arc 3, they have been doing a new job for months, like I think almost like 6 months at this point, which is they're going through the bowels of the academy and interviewing all of the different people working in labs down there about themselves and their projects, because I think they're being tasked with rooting out anybody who, just any other traitors, people who might have been in league with Mauer. But Sai and I think also Mary really hate this job because like holy shit, it is so boring. And then eventually an experiment called Sub Rosa breaks out, and they kind of get chased deeper, deeper, deeper into the bowels, which was kind of like a worst case scenario. And then Sai and Helen and I think Jamie are the like combo who end up being able to defeat her.
Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of like the broad strokes of what we hit. But I know we each have like more
And
particular notes we'd want to talk about.
and then the 2 interludes were we had one of the shepherd and his time at war, and
Yeah.
the arc 3 interlude was what again?
Let's see. Was that where they were introducing Genevieve? Let's see.
Yes, and it feeds into arc 4 directly. So that one was
Yes.
broke the pattern a little bit that we were
Yes,
establishing.
it was Genevieve's head companion and how he got into that situation, which is, I don't know if you knew this. So after Worm initially finished, before Wildbow had written his other stories, he kind of put out sample chapters just to like explore different settings, and it was just kind of one or two chapters of each of these different stories, and these stories eventually turned into like Twig and Pact and what is now Seek, which is currently coming out.
What? Hold on. I did not know there was a currently ongoing Wild Bow story
Oh
in
yes,
Seek.
yes, that is
Oh.
his delve into the sci-fi genre, which
Oh, okay. No, I
I,
think you
I
did tell
I
me
read the
about
first
that.
few and it's God, it's interesting. But
Cool.
yeah, so he had put out like sampler chapters of what eventually became like the settings of Pact and Twig and stuff. And in the sampler for Twig, Genevieve Frey was actually the main character. So at the end of
Uh,
arc 3, when I saw the mention of her and saw that chapter from the head's perspective, I was like, wait a fucking minute, this is
that's
interesting.
cool. I can tell Wild Bow likes her, and I have a feeling she's going to be really important in the story, like potentially Jack Slash type of like recurring antagonist.
Yeah,
Um,
because I don't know. It's like it's someone so opposed to the Academy, and I'm like, the Academy is not a force for good. So I'm like,
yeah, I mean that's an interesting thing to talk about right there. So I guess we'll focus mostly on Arc 2 stuff and jump around as we do.
yeah,
But I think an interesting part of this is like as Sai is idolizing the Shepherd as he goes on to be called the Reverend slash Shepherd. Um, I'm like, okay, so why and how is this guy so good at manipulating people, and why does Sai like him so much? And it's like, is this a show don't tell situation of like I'm just being told that he's good at manipulating people? But as you learn more about the Academy, early on it's just like okay, the Academy seems powerful, but you learn more about like how scummy they are and how they're basically like a government within themselves, like a with a military force attached to them, and um, we learn a little bit about the Civil War, which is a whole conversation to talk about. But it's like, oh no, this academy and the people's grievances with it seem very legit, and I can see why it'd be so easy for the Shepherd to be such a threat and to gather his followers to the way that he does, where they become very loyal.
yeah. When I reached the end of arc 2, I was very interested because of the position I guess our protagonists are in this story, working for the Academy. Because
Mhm.
in a way they kind of come from a position of power. They are kids, but they're working for the Academy, so they have resources. They're more skilled than the average person, but I don't know. Like you said, these people had legitimate grievances against the Academy. Because I'm like, technically, the Shepherd organized a mass peaceful protest. They had weapons, but that was just in the event the Academy gave them an excuse for violence. So I'm like, I don't know. These people have legitimate grievances against the Academy, feeling it's committed atrocities and made their lives worse in some way, and they organize a grassroots peaceful mass protest who our protagonists must oppose, because if they don't, I mean, their mission's considered a failure and they die. And even when they were being sent on this mission from like the director of the Academy, Briggs, I actually think the Lambs were kind of the ones pushing for them to take on this project, because I think Briggs was like, "Don't we just have the firepower to go just mow these people down?" And
Which to
they,
me was wild as a sidebar. It's like, oh, so they have enough sway to mow the protesters down and not have a repercussion.
well,
Excuse
and
me.
that's the thing, is they're like, if you go mow all of these people down, like that's just going to make the people of the city even more angry and lead to more riots. And his rebuttal to that was like, yeah, but we have enough firepower to put
Yeah,
down those riots too. So what's the fucking
crazy.
deal? So like, I don't know, them trying to convince him to even let them do this was interesting. Um, which I don't know, he kind of ratchets up the intensity once they do end up succeeding in this mission, because he's
Yeah,
like, I'm gonna test you until you break, and I'm like, oh Jesus.
yeah. What's your take on Briggs? He's basically like, is he the head of the academy or the head of like their wing? I guess like their subsection of the academy because he seems pretty high up there, but I
I
forget the exact role.
I got the feeling that he has like the final say so on like any and all projects that are approved. So
Yeah.
like the de facto head, if not just the head.
Which, speaking of projects that were approved, he's also in charge of canceling projects, and we learn about two canceled projects that were part of the Lambs. I think one of them was Yvette, and I forget the other
Yes,
one.
one of the ones that died when they were younger.
Hmm. And It's just interesting because like the lambs consider these basically like siblings that like it's interesting, right? They're like, what is a project, and like at what stage of life was whatever child they were experimenting on? Like, were they tube grown? Were they like Jamie that we learn a little bit more about how he was made later? And it's like it's just interesting that no matter what or where they come from, the kids do consider them siblings and do lament the fact that they kind of died in the womb, quote unquote.
Yeah,
No matter how,
and
yeah,
because like across arc 2 and 3 we get like very slight glimpses into what their past was, because not all of the lambs met each other at exactly the same time. Like I think there was a point in time where, it was just like Cy and Gordon, and then, like Jamie comes in, and uh,
and I
so
think then I think it's Helen and what holy shit, what's the medic's name?
oh,
Oh, I wanted to say
Lillian,
Lacey.
the L
Lillian?
names, yeah, Lillian.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you wonder, like, at what point along were they when these like ones who died prematurely left?
Hmm. And like, did they even meet them, or did they just hear it's like, hey, there's another project going along?
I
I
feel like they
forget
must
if
have
that's
met them at
mentioned.
some point, like just because of the intensity of emotions, I guess.
Maybe, or maybe they just really connect with the idea that's like, damn, I wish like I'd be sad if my project fell through and then I was like, I don't know, canceled,
Yeah.
as it were.
Um. So at least as far as other Arc 2 stuff, because I figure we're kind of jumping around. I guess in some sense we should go chronologically to a degree. Um, because there is something kind of interesting in the front half of Arc 2 before they actually go and confront this Reverend Maurer at his church. Um, because I think before they even know Reverend Mauer's the guy they're after, they kind of go down to this guy named Walter who works in the bowels,
Yeah.
and they kind of interview slash torture information out of him, which is how they learn about Reverend Maurer. Um, and there's a few things I found notable about this. One of them is just that the scene is kind of funny because like
Crushing
um,
his balls, right? Like,
they're crushing his balls, and then like Sai sees this moment where he can set up a really good line where he walks up and he's like, "We're your judge," and then Jamie says,
jury.
and jury," and then internally Sai's like, "Oh my God, Jamie, I love you," and then Mary says, "and executioners," and he's like, "Oh my God, Mary, I'm so glad we added you to the group," and then Gordon adds on to the very end, "if need be," and he's like, Gordon, you're all right."
I wrote that down too. That might be one of my favorite like moments of just their weird little bond, and it's such a good way to explain the character dynamics in one little punchline. Like that is just a really well written bit,
I
in my
say, like,
opinion.
Sai as a narrator is just insanely entertaining to listen to, even when he's by himself. But like when he's bouncing off these others, he's hilarious. I think there's a moment like, because this is the beginning of arc 2. I think beginning of arc 3. By that point, Sai and Gordon kind of go through fluctuations of butting heads more and getting along more. I think depending on
Yeah,
how much of an asshole Sai's being. At the beginning
yeah.
of arc 3, I think like they've been butting heads more than normal, and as a sign of peace, I think Gordon lets Sai team up with Jamie and Mary, his favorites, and internally in his head, he's like, you know what? That Gordon guy, he's all right.
It's alright. I mean,
um,
it makes sense also that they butt head when things are more stressful and like they're kind of like stir crazy in arc
yeah.
3 from being bored, so it makes
So
sense.
there was that funny scene while they were interrogating this Walter guy, but I also just thought it was interesting because when they're torturing him and they get to like the cock and ball torture portion of it,
Oh yes.
um, like this Walter guy, he's sobbing and he's on the verge of a complete breakdown, and Sai starts doing some like moral rationalizations in his head about whether treating Walter this way is justifiable. It like in the usual moral debates, like this guy's already knowingly caused harm to people by releasing the experiment whiskers, and more people are going to get hurt if we don't do our thing. And then he only does these moral justifications for a sentence or so, and then he actually stops himself and he's like, I don't need to do this. I don't need to justify or rationalize this because frankly, I just don't care that much. I don't feel bad, and I wouldn't feel bad if this guy died. which is very different than a different Wild Bow protagonist, Taylor, who, even for Jack, who is like the most understandably killable dude in existence, had multiple paragraphs of, this is a scary line to cross, but maybe this is the time I'm supposed to cross it. And in any case, I wonder how honest Sai's really being with himself here. Like, how much he cares about this guy or does not care about this guy. I think he's making it a point to say to himself, I don't care what we're doing to this guy.
So I would interpret it as him being realistic because we got to remember, I think every one of the kids has killed before at this point. I don't know.
Definitely.
They haven't killed any innocents on like screen or anything, or like have they even killed a human on screen? But it's definitely implied that they have.
It's implied that
Aside
they
from
have.
like, yeah, like they didn't kill Percy, but they've killed like experiments on
Yeah.
screen. Yeah, it is heavily implied that they are very accustomed to killing. Maybe not like super accustomed, but they all have like a small body count, I would imagine.
Yeah, and so, like, I know it's not an issue of, like, killing itself. I know they're okay with that, I think, if they have to do it. I guess for Sai, it was more of a moment of, like, does this. Because there's definitely, like, a level where it's we have to do this for the job. I feel like Sai might have been at a moment where he wasn't sure if what they were doing was the necessary level of violence, and I think the only reason I'm hung up on this is I wrote this down. I didn't think about it as much until Arc 3, where each of the lands are not prevented,
Yes.
presented with scenarios where they can take the easy route of killing Academy doctors to blend in with these convicts they're sneaking around with. They could take the easy route, just kill one of these doctors and not be suspected, or they can take the hard route of having to, on the fly, invent a convoluted way to make it look like they killed a doctor for no other reason than we don't want to kill these people.
So I think the line to draw there is that the doctors are quote unquote innocent. That's
No, you
already a
know,
stretch. But also they're sent there. I mean, like they're not sent there to rescue the doctors, but it is like an implied part of the job because they're sent there to like root out the mole for the reverend and like run a bunch of interviews and stuff. So like they're working for Briggs. They're there on a mission, and then shit hits the fan. So I think they expand that to like, okay, we're here to do good. Let's also try to minimize the casualties if we can. Well, in this case, like they're pretty much interviewing the culprit, and I feel like they have very little leeway for the culprit and very little sympathy.
actually,
Like
yeah,
not maybe deliberately the culprit, but he is part of like the scheme that released Whiskers, right? The scaled monster.
yeah. So I guess
So
even if there's like a level of basic human decency that you would offer to someone, this guy, I mean, he's already knowingly released a monster.
yeah,
Um,
so in that case, I think Sai mostly means it. That he's like, I mean, why the fuck should I care about this guy, right? And yeah, I feel like that's consistent with
okay,
the scared scientists that are trying to hide and are in the middle of a breakout.
yeah, we're in arc three. We're up to like arc three or so of the story, so I'm trying to like probe like how much does Sai care about people that he doesn't have like a strict reason to care about.
There will
Um,
be an interesting addition to this in a later arc, for sure. I will say that this it's keep this conversation in mind because I'm curious to see how it evolves.
I'm sure it develops. And it's even funny in Arc 3 when he's trying to save one of the scientists, because he even knows it would be easier to just kill one of them, but he's like, his internal monologue, he's like, I have to admit, part of me was motivated by things like, saving lives, human decency, or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, dude.
That's so when he says it like that, that's when I'm like, okay, now he's trying to like put on a show for himself a little bit,
Yeah,
where
he does.
like
He cares. He cares about people a little bit.
absolutely whenever he's saying, "Oh, I'm detached," or "I don't care about these things," and it relates to like either one of the lambs or trying to do something good, that's when I think he's most lying to himself or like twisting
Yeah.
his own truth a little bit.
So to move on a little bit with Arc 2, because I mean, that whole conversation is like the first chapter of it.
Yeah.
They end up moving on. Now, there's a lot of stuff we talked about in Arc 1 like Sai's relationship to the other lambs, how he kind of views them as his family. We talked a lot about his relationship to Lillian, and we were like, oh, we're going to see how these things are going to develop over the course of the story. I feel like both of these things developed a lot more rapidly than I thought they would in these two
Mm.
arcs. It's really interesting when they're showing up to the church and they have two doctors with them. It's the Lambs and also these doctors Cecil and Lacey.
Yeah.
And God, like we know Sai just hates Lacey.
Their
Um,
dynamic is I feel so bad for Lacey. She's getting bullied by this little shit child.
yeah, and so they need Cecil and Lacey here as like their adult chaperones, even though the Lambs are the ones that are meant to kind of do all the work. And so they're talking to the Reverend, and Cecil keeps chiming in with these ad libs, and Sai's like, "Oh my fucking god, get this guy out of here! He won't let me talk and do my thing." And Lacey is actually the one who gets him out of the room. And Lacey asks Cecil, like, "Hey, can you go with some of the other kids and keep them out of trouble in the other room?" And it works perfectly for getting him out of the room in an organic way. And I can't help but feel like if Jamie or Helen or Mary did that, Sai would have been silently praising them in his head or telepathically for telepathically understanding the problem and just coming up with an efficient solution. But
Yep.
when someone like Lacey or Lillian does it, he doesn't even acknowledge or think about it. He doesn't even in his head go, "Oh, thank God that guy's out of the room," even though a minute ago he was going crazy about it.
And what's interesting about this, right, is I was thinking like, okay, why does Sai just not get along with Lillian? And I was positing in the first time we talked about it that it's like because she's just not the same man. She doesn't have an expiration
Yeah.
date. He like instinctively views those people completely different. And I feel like he has no reason to hate Lacey as much as he does. As far as as I've understood, I can't empathize with why he's so annoyed by her, aside from the fact that she's just a normal human who has any level of power over him, and that's like enough for him to just dismiss her completely. And it sucks because Lacey's like she seems like she's good at her job and tries to be understanding, and like she can even be good in missions like this, but they just can't work together for Sai's own issues.
Yeah, no, I think he does a lot of projecting with Lacey. Because I had one note here about, especially in Arc 2, he flips switches with Lillian very often. Where I think even in Arc 2 at the beginning of it, she's kind of at a point where she's like, Saya's just always so fucking mean to me, and I'm tired of how he treats me and stuff like that. And there are multiple points during Arc 2 where he needs something from Lillian for the mission, and he puts on a nice act. He starts being nice to her, and she'll even smile. She'll be like, "Oh my god, I'm like Sai, this is so unexpected." And then the moment he gets whatever item he needs from her, he'll go back to treating her like shit. And it's just this very just disingenuous niceness from him. And then at the very end of that same arc, um, Lacey is with Sai when he finds out about I think when he is able to look at the files and learn the actual expiration dates, and despite the fact that at that point in the arc she is just not she's not even trying to feign niceness to him at that point. She's like, fuck this guy. But she sees him learn about their expiration dates and offers him some genuine niceness. And in Sai's own inner monologue, he says, "It's a niceness that I would have called hypocritical coming from her before." And my first reaction to that is like, Sai, you've never had a reason to think her niceness is hypocritical at all. She only started being mean when you kept slapping her niceness down. And I think part of it might just be Sai projecting and thinking that her niceness is ingenuine because that is something he did to Lillian like half a dozen times this very same arc.
Ooh, that's a cool way to look at. I wouldn't have connected it directly with Lillian like that, but that's a very interesting way to look at it.
So I don't know, just like the way he treats both of these girls. There's a point where he gives an order to Lacey, and he just barks the order at her, and she turns around. She's like, "First of all, stop saying my name like I'm a dog. Stop snapping your fingers at me. All this stuff." She just tells him off, but then she turns around to go do the task anyway, and he says "fetch" to her back. And Jamie turns to him and he's like, "You are such an asshole."
Yeah, like before we were starting, I was like, I was going over my notes, and one of my notes is, Sai calls Lacey a bitch? Question mark. Like that just it was such a direct mean because he's usually like, I don't know, maybe a little bit subtle with his snark and his meanness, but
Yeah.
like he can be very direct with her.
And that's the thing. I think his relationship with both of our L girls, Lillian and Lacey, is kind of at the forefront in arc two. By the end of the arc, he's actually acting much nicer to both of them because there are multiple moments where he realized he could not have succeeded the day without their help, and he was like, even in his own internal monologue, he's like, I might have gone a little too hard on them, but it's kind of too late because I think it was before we were recording and you and I were going over stuff. There's a moment where he's talking to Lacey near the end, and he even tries to kind of make her feel better with a, you can call me Sai. All my friends call me Sai, and she's like, shut up, Sylvester.
You know what? Good. Someone's gonna put this kid in his place.
So yeah, I don't know. They
So,
do the whole thing with. Oh yeah, what were you saying?
so you alluded to a interesting scene where we are kind of talking to the shepherd, having tea with him and
Yeah,
just kind of sussing him out. During that scene, he starts talking about the war, and I don't know if this was established in the first arc, but if it was, we didn't really talk about it either. But we're in America, like not a facsimile. We're just in America, and we have just diverged a lot from our reality. Clearly,
yeah. So
um,
my current read is that sometime in the 1800s, somebody in the realm of Britain, which is called the Crown in this setting, um, somebody within that realm discovered these biological ratios, which allowed for all of these, biological advancements. And I think the Crown used that to just kind of go on a world conquering spree, reconquering all their colonies. So yeah, we're in America, but we belong to the Crown.
okay, and but there, so so the war that is the shepherd's interlude, which was a really good interlude.
Yeah.
A lot of shitting yourself in that one, but Wamba was really keyed into that. So that was a war between America and the Crown funds the Academy. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I don't know if that was strictly like Crown versus America war. It could have
I,
just he could have been conscripted to fight someone else for all I know.
I thought it was I thought it was a civil war at first because that would have lined up because I also thought this was like 1800 something, so I was like
Yeah.
maybe that's eight civil war was like what 1860. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, maybe that lined up in some way.
So
Actually,
that
I want to double check then the specifics of that chapter and like who they're fighting because very interested in the because it seems like there's been a couple of wars recently, like one or two, and yeah, I was just I was like, is it a civil war? And like the way that the stitched influence warfare was one of the most interesting parts of this two chapter read.
that's the
Um,
thing. There's a lot of I don't know. You just introduce a lot of horrifying elements to warfare with a lot of the stuff they're doing in this setting. Like I think in his chapter the academy had spread some plague on the other side
yeah,
that like they're like even if they won this battle and went home to their families, the plague would just kill their families, and then all the people on our side are like, okay, great, they're gonna fight even harder to the death now.
yeah, I reread that part like a couple times. It's like, oh my god, the cruelty here. It's just no Geneva Convention, obviously, and also like I think they mentioned like their big boats and ships are like flesh ships with
Yeah,
arms and shit so they can like crawl into land, and I'm just like visualizing this hellscape that they're fighting in.
yeah, I think one of the ships had like octopus tentacles to drag itself with or
What
something.
the fuck, man? Like that's also like a feat that we haven't seen before because maybe I don't know how big this. Maybe I had to reread it, but like if I'm picturing like a big ass ship, not like a boat, and it has that much like flesh and organic component, I was like, I didn't know they were capable of creating and sustaining these stitch life forms of that scale. Because we've only seen like tall human, kind of like is
Yeah.
the most we've seen, or horses, I guess. as far as I remember. So like to scale that up to fucking large vehicles is the setting is scarier than I thought.
That's the
Basically,
thing. The Gorger is mentioned, and I felt like he was the top of like our experiment power scaling. And then I'm sure if you go to an actual battlefield, there's tons of things like this.
insane.
Which also there's only been one mention of it so far. It was either in Arc 2 or 3, and I think it was Director Briggs who said it. There was mention of a super weapon underneath the
The
Academy,
Academy, yeah.
which is kind of horrifying. Because,
It's, I've read a Wild Bow story again. This is an Arc 12
oh
storyline if
yeah.
I've ever seen one. Maybe 13, maybe even the final arc.
But yeah, the whole situation at the church in Arc 2, it's very interesting. It's a way that they're doing combat kind of without doing combat. It's a battle of optics, and uh, I think we mentioned earlier, Sai just has some profound respect for the way that this reverend has people wrapped around his finger. But there's kind of a like amazing reverse moment of this where like the reason the lambs are so effective is people know about Stitched and what Stitched can do, but people don't. Even people in the academy don't know about the lambs. They are very secret. Like you don't expect a team of covert ops children who have special talents to be walking into your rally to try to mess it up. You're not looking out for stuff like that because no one knows that stuff exists. But there's a certain point near the end of Arc 2 where Reverend finally catches on to them and realizes, okay, these kids must be working with the Academy. And his head turns straight towards Sai. And he looks at Sai, and he's like, he wasn't looking at me as just a kid anymore. He was looking at me as the player on the opposite side of the game board. And I was like, that's a pretty fucking cool line.
Oh, Sai was so excited. He hits him with like the game on, and then they like they basically fight it out for the last two chapters there or so. Like fight it out, quote unquote. I will say the actual like I would consider this the action portion of the arc is the rally. I would say it's like it wasn't super engaging for me the whole time. There was interesting bits here and there, but it was hard to see like where are we going with this? Like how is this going to lead to them defeating the Reverend. It's essentially just yeah. I think you were saying we're just hoping that he orders he loses face by attacking children basically. But it's
Yeah.
like it's a stretch how they get there. Like they break in all bloodied and like all the experiments are on the loose, and then like just to bring up mass hysteria. It's just like a lot of like dodgy steps to get to our victory. So it wasn't like a very clean action portion of the arc, I would say.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We want to see some action. And the
Well,
lambs want to see some action too.
when I say that, it's like I'm not expecting like fist fighting action. I'm cool with like the action being like a JoJo strategy battle. I will just say that like the pieces weren't like really clicking for me there to like make it engaging the whole way through.
I will say, like, they kind of have like a checkmate part, which is like he ends up pulling a gun on Helen, which is
Yeah,
like
that
their
was a good part.
checkmate. But I did kind of have to go back and read through another time to like see how they actually like pulled the noose tight and got him into that checkmate situation.
Which is exactly right, right? Like when it's a psychological battle, the joy doesn't come from like, oh, that was a cool move. The joy comes from you like seeing the eureka moment and like piecing all the little moments that happened before it that built up to the climax. Um, so if those little moments building up to it are like a little dodgy, it's like what are we doing? Like what's the end goal here? I think not knowing the end goal, or like how, or like what a conclusion would look like in a scenario like this, that's what made it like a little bit tricky to be engaged with.
No, that's exactly the thing. When I was only about halfway through Arc 2, I even had a note where I was like, I don't know what I genuinely don't know how they would win this scenario without it escalating into, fucking riots and violence.
And it
Um,
almost did too. Like the Stitch show up at the end.
so that's the thing. Like once I saw how it ended and where it was going, I was kind of able to better understand. It's kind of the whole arc is just kind of this tug of war between the Reverend and Sai.
Hmm.
And the tug of war is like just the mob mentality of this crowd. This crowd's not doing any critical thinking. They're just kind of going based on emotion. and Sai and the Reverend are basically just trying to get events to happen and then just being the first to paint whatever light on that event. So
And yeah, like once it's concluded and you see how it plays out, it's like okay, that was cool. It's just yeah, in the moment, it's interesting. But then also like, I think knowing more about the Reverend, like knowing about how justified he is, because you know you start turning on the Academy as a reader yourself. Uh, um, so it's like knowing that and then thinking about how he manipulated the crowd in hindsight. It's like okay, the Reverend's actually really cool. I quite like him as an antagonist and
that's the
what he was
thing.
doing there.
I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I was like, maybe I did want this rally to rise up
I
against the Academy.
I'm staunchly anti-academy, I like I they never really focus on good merits. I'm sure there's a bunch, especially like in between like small lines of like yeah yada 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 led to good medicine or something, but that's never the focus. The focus is like we're just designing more fucked up things to hunt people down and enforce our rule.
No, seriously, because we're about to roll it. We've talked a little bit about Arc 3 stuff, and we're about to roll into it
Let's
more seriously. But
let's roll into it.
in Arc 3, like related to what you were saying, how the Academy is always has a different agenda other than like the the one that would give them good PR, I guess.
Yeah,
Because
right.
like in the battles in Arc 3, they run into these like kind of like black metallic bugs or whatever that bite and sting them, and they're actually talking to the creators of these bugs down in the bowels, and they're like, yeah, we actually created them to help spread like inoculations and vaccines and stuff to the whole population for free, but the only way we could get the project approved by the Academy is by saying they were new weapons.
Yeah, like actually I forgot about that part, but even like it's sad because okay, some of the scientists are clearly good, which you know brings us back to Sai trying to save them. It's like they're yes, they work for an evil entity. They're not necessarily evil. They're going to the one place that has the resources for them to study their scientific interest or whatnot. But damn, is the academy itself just like blatantly evil? Like,
Yeah,
that we are we the baddies, and the answer has been yes since like pretty early on. There's no twist here
yeah, and I feel like each arc is just throwing more fuel onto the fire.
for sure.
In Arc 3, the Lambs have been, at the start of it, the Lambs for months now have been going to each of the secret labs down in the bowels and interviewing people. What are you working on? You know, who are you associated with? They're trying to kind of rat out if there's any other traitors, kind of like a Walter who is associated with Mauer. And eventually they get trapped down here, which, like, we've barely heard or seen of the bowels up to this point, but I think we had seen enough to know that getting trapped down in the bowels was like a worst case scenario type situation.
It's where freaks like Helen are from. She just feels right at home.
And that's the thing we before now have already heard of all these containment measures for when stuff gets trapped down here, where they're like, oh yeah, they'll close it off and flood it with water and burn everything in there, and then wait an extra few weeks just to let everything starve. And so it's like the second they're trapped down here, everyone's just like, fuck. And Lillian is having like a doubly worse day because she's like, I've tried to imagine what the worst possible thing that could happen to me is, and it's being trapped with Psy down here, and it's happening.
Her dynamic with Sai is so good. By the way, I really like Lillian. Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should do arc 3 stuff and then maybe go to like some back and forth questions for each other if we have any. Let's just cover more of arc 3. I'll circle
Yeah.
back to Lillian.
But I think her relationship with Psy is like, it's very much at the forefront, I think, in Arc 3. Um, so they're going through the experiment they're trapped down here with is one called Sub Rosa, who we get to learn more about over the course of the arc. She used to be an academy employee, like a very high up one.
Yeah, she did she have Briggs's position specifically or at least like close to it, right?
I don't know if it was specifically his. I think what she was more specifically in charge of was the bowels themselves. So like
Okay.
she was in the dirty dirty.
Yeah, yeah. But she was like the like a sub manager of like she was from what I understood, she was high up in the bowel system,
Yeah,
which
so
is
like she's
that's a
able to
funny
go
setup.
through these she's able to go through the side panels that would trigger all of these fail safes that would like burn and flood the hallways, and she's able to selectively turn them off or turn them on if she needs to. She was also the one who designed Gorger, so I think he doesn't really slow her down very much. Um, which was
Yeah,
also cool. We get to see
there's some
Gorger in
power
action.
scaling. Yeah. So what is Gorger's deal again? He's just a big, fat, like horrifying monster. Because we're kind of running away as he's fighting Sub Rosa. So I forget like what his actual deal is. Because
So I think what it is he's like defense stat 99, and then what he does, I think his body is already big, and it kind of inflates itself in the hallways of the bowels to
right.
where like he is touching all four walls. You cannot get by him, and then I think he just slowly moves through the hallway, like consuming everything in it until it's clear.
Right. Okay. Yeah. He's big boy. He just becomes a wall. I guess he's particularly good then in closed spaces because I don't remember them mentioning if he's particularly fast. But like everyone's scared of Gorger is the thing. He's brought up by so many minor antagonists, major antagonists, like all the Academy people. Like he's brought up a lot. Same with Dog and Hound.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah
they're the
the
trackers, right? They're really good at tracking.
yeah, and I like that they're like I like that they feel like they're on a tier with the lambs because like there's been times where they've all met up together and they're just like subcatcher and they're like, oh hey lambs, and it's
I
like
really like. I don't know if it was in this arc, but there's a moment between. Holy shit! I do this every time.
oh god,
George? No, Gregory?
Gordon.
Gordon. Fuck, dude.
No, you do that with Gordon. It's only Gordon. I feel like.
I cannot remember Gordon's name. I'm literally like listening to the story, and Gordon was just talking a couple like paragraphs again, and I pause, and I'm like, "What the fuck is Gordon's name?" Like, I'm so bad with it. I don't know why. I think it's because I have a coworker that's a name similar to Gordon, and my
Ah,
mind gets like flipped. But Gordon has like a moment with I think Dog, and he like communicates well with him despite the fact that Dog can't talk,
yeah.
and I feel like Gordon has gotten a bad rap because we are in Sai's head, but there's this thing about Gordon where he can his charm stat is maxed. Like all his social stats are
Yeah.
really good, right? That's one of his thing, and he's very physically fit. He's like a perfect human. Like his only thing is like being Captain America perfection as far as the setting will allow it. And part of that is that he can empathize and like communicate with any experiment. Like he's really good at breaking those communication barriers of even with the experiments that are no longer like human at all basically, and he still has a soft spot for them, and I thought that was like really interesting, and it's nice to give Gordon some positive traits.
I'll say he's the Pokemon you throw out first in most situations.
He's the lead. Sure. I uh I, I've I've grown on Gordon a lot. I will say, in arc 4 and 5, Gordon gets real good in my opinion, but that's a story for another day.
Yes, it is. I've only done the first couple of Arc 4, but it clearly we're getting more out of Gordon there than I feel like we have done.
But yeah, we're fighting Sub Rosa. I will say the way the Sub Rosa encounter started was kind of like extremely jarring, right? We're just doing these interviews, and then I think like a commotion happens, and then she just walks by the kids and goes downstairs, like right, like she just kind of walks past them,
Yeah,
and that starts the arc.
yeah. They hear. I think they hear maybe the failsafes go off, and they're like, "What the fuck was that?" And they leave their rooms, and she's like kind of going at a brisk pace through the hallway, and they're like, "This lady, like face, torso, hands up to the elbows, just covered in blood." I think they said she glanced at us and then just kept going by, so it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, so that was a interesting way to start. That whole became a whole fucking thing. So we talked about it earlier, but I think like there's two bits of quote unquote action here. Like the two like meaty bits is the prisoner's dilemma of like fitting in with the experiments and trying to make sure that we minimize damage while like not pissing them off and not getting them to turn on us. And I thought that was like a really interesting bit of showing every character's social skills and strategizing. And I really like the implicit trust that Sai has to put. Where it's like, I'm gonna go in this room with this experiment. Everyone's splitting up. I have to believe that my friends are gonna be able to get in the same wavelength as me, and either kill their captor, or like all of us pretend to kill the people, or just do it, whatever works best,
Yeah,
and get out of this together.
because during that portion, I think is when Sai is first talking about what they used to do when they were younger. Him and I think Helen and Gordon and Jamie, where they would play these prisoners dilemma games. It was called something else. I think it was called Naughty or Nice, where without any type of verbal communication, they basically have to come to the same conclusion in scenarios like this. And so he's like, this is just like us playing a real world version of that game. And what's really interesting is, he Sai ends up going the route of like, I'm gonna try to. I'm not gonna actually kill this academy doctor. I'm gonna fake the death and hope the other people did the same. And he comes back out, and most of the other people were on the same page as him.
Except
Mary, I think, just tried to stab the convict she was with, and he kind of even has a moment where he's like, he always silently praises her in his head when she does what the rest of the group would do, and I think here he's kind of like, Mary, I don't know, she just hasn't been in here as long as us.
yeah, it's it's an interesting moment of like, yeah, I don't know what I expected. Like, she's just not quite in the same sync as us, is the way he kind of phrases it. Which is not like mean. It's just like realistic. It's like he's not very hard on her, but she's very hard on herself, and he notices that immediately. I think so does Gordon.
Yeah, but what was even more notable to me than what Mary did is what Lillian did, which is what all the other lambs did. She
Yeah.
did a whole thing where she faked killing the guy by, like, she has syringes on her person. She administered him a quote unquote lethal dose, and I think Sai was very impressed with that. And by the end of this arc, Sai, I feel, has a kind of different relationship with Lillian.
Oh yes.
He would never openly admit to liking her, but he clearly has a different level of respect and goes out of his way to comfort her where he would not have before. And I don't know if this was one particular thing that just kind of pushed the needle that way of him going like, man, maybe she is one of us.
With Wild Bow, he's very subtle with some of these character shifts. Like there sometimes is a big moment, like you would see in a lot of stories. Sometimes it just happens over the course of time, and I feel like Lillian might be that, where it's like, I don't think Sai is ever going to reflect of like, that's the moment I saw Lillian
Yeah,
as like
no.
one of us. I think it's just going to naturally feel that way.
And now, since we're like in the shit and people are being threatened and our lives are in danger, one thing that was really interesting, and we talked about this a lot in our kind of arc one analysis where we're getting to know these characters, and the arc one already had the seeds of how does Sai really feel about the other lambs. He kind of makes jokes about like, oh yeah, I care about you guys so much. You're like one big family to me. And even back then, we're like, okay, Sai, like you do though, you do care about them. And part of Sai's whole thing, what he does is that metaphor he gave us of, in order to learn someone or something's true nature, you shake the box. He had that analogy of like, there's bugs in the box, you shake the box, you put them in danger, and I don't know, you are kind of revealed these truths about what is valuable to them. That's what he does with all kinds of people. He puts them on their back foot, makes them feel like they're in danger in order to make them predictable or get whatever their actual priorities are to come out. And I think in Arc 3, Sai is kind of a bug in a box, where before this arc, he was much more deflective about any ideas that he just truly loves the other lands. But I think the first point in this arc when it like genuinely it looks like they're gonna die, like they're getting cornered by Sub Rosa and the convicts for the first time, he kind of goes into this fight or flight panic that we haven't quite seen, even though he's been in danger before. This is just like kind of a more certain danger. and his mind goes to this place where he's like, please don't take my friends away from me. He's like, please don't hurt them. Please, like almost just begging the universe. And so I thought it was interesting where I'm like, I don't know, the truth kind of comes out.
I wanna drill in on that. He has a genuine near death moment where Sub Rosa is basically about to swing him like a chair, like a
Yes.
steel chair, into the ground, literally shaking the box. By the way, now that you say that he's the bug in the box, and that kind of like shakes him in a way where they're like, "Sai, you're playing it off, but we can tell that that impacted you in an interesting way. Like even the other kids are able to tell."
Yeah.
Um, there's another moment later in the arc where Jamie almost dies. I think he gets like fucking yeeted down the stairs. Like his books go flying everywhere, and he really cares about his journal. Sidebar: in the count of three, we're gonna say who the best character is, maybe excluding Sai. Okay,
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
I would
Jamie.
say Jamie.
Okay,
I,
cool.
I was gonna say Psy until you excluded Psy, and I was like, okay,
Okay.
it's Jamie.
Jamie is so good, and maybe it's particularly in this arc. I think it's interesting. Like we're not getting arcs necessarily focused on the characters, not very direct. We're very like plot oriented still, but there are character focuses a little bit. Like you mentioned Lillian as like a notable one last time. I think Jamie is the notable one this time, but we do also get more of his backstory this time, which is first of all, I think this stems from like when we're checking ourselves for the bug bites. We learned that all the boys are a little self-conscious about all their like Frankenstein scars that they
Yeah.
have, right? Jamie in particular has been very self-conscious about his, and we've known that up for the previous arcs. He even wears his hair in a way that covers them, and I think it's because like I think the way to describe it, like his spine in particular looks completely fucked up. That part of his body.
Like there's so many scars, it just looks like a gnarled mess or something.
And the reason is, and this might be the first experiment we know what it is, the Caterpillar Project. So Jamie was a normal boy, and correct me if I get anything wrong here. They took out parts of his body surgically, cloned them to be better and enhanced, put them back into him.
Which is kind
And
of wild. You're getting implants from your cloned self.
what in a setting like this is very wild. And then what he does is he interfaces with a giant like tube of brains and puts his memories and thoughts into those brains. Um and that's the Caterpillar Project, right? Am I missing anything there?
I think you got it. And that's the thing. On the actual website, there's quite a few arts that have been made just as headers for each chapter. I think there's like
Ooh.
one for each lamb. And I think one of them kind of depicts this maybe Jamie going through his appointments.
Which is very painful to him, as it turns out. But a part of Jamie's character is that he exists to be a transceiver for a larger like data bank of knowledge, and he's afraid of forgetting anything and starting to lose potency. And part of that is he keeps a journal, and I recall it's because he wants to make sure the journal is kind of like his backup memory is how I interpret it, right? So when he's getting yeeted down the stairs, like the journal also goes flying, and Sai notes that in a particular way where it's like, I think even Sai, as much as he distances himself from all these characters, like even he knows what that journal means to Jamie and what that meaning means to like Jamie's future. Like the fact that that journal is as meaningful as it is to Jamie lets Sai know that Jamie is worrying about his own mortality and his own efficacy as a knowledge base, and he's worried about like losing all that, and the journal's part of it. So like he like maybe I misread it, but Sai seemed like distressed that the journal was almost destroyed, and then obviously distressed about the fact that Jamie was a gnarled mess like on the floor.
Yeah, they clearly know what's important to each other. I mean,
Mhm.
like, all the lambs have an interesting relationship to each other, but I especially like Sai and Jamie's, the way they're able to talk to each other, how much they clearly care about each other. I think even Sai at one point in this arc says that Jamie is like his oldest and best friend. Or he's walking with Mary and he's like, oh my god, this is so fun, my oldest friend and my newest friend. Uh,
So
But
cute.
yeah,
Which is interesting. He knew Gordon before Jamie.
yeah, that's the
Uh,
thing. He would have been introduced to Gordon before, so I don't know.
but that's not his oldest friends, so what are they?
But yeah,
It's
Jamie
interesting.
has noticed some of those lapses in his memory because when they find out that Sub Rosa was actually this employee of the academy, he's so upset with himself because he's like I know her face, and he's like we've walked by Sub Rosa a half dozen times now. I can't believe I didn't recognize her. And other people are like, dude, Jamie, it's fucking
It's yeah.
okay. But obviously he's going through a lot of internal strife with that, where it's like a lot like being this knowledge base is his whole identity, and if that starts failing, the people who have his life in their hands are probably going to be like, oh well, your toy doesn't work anymore. Let's just cancel it. And
He also talks about the fear of like during the procedures, like I didn't know if I was gonna wake up again
yeah,
because I could be lobotomized, I could just die. Like there, so much could have gone wrong in those procedures.
so it
Um,
was it was very sweet seeing how much Sai cared for him when he just got flung against the wall. Sai said like Sub Rosa like grabbed his ankle, flung him against the wall. There were cracks, and it was bad enough that I was like, I feel like Jamie's too important to kill off here, but I'm like, how crazy would it be if we did? So I don't know.
hmm. um, yeah. So Sub Rosa, we'll switch gears for a sec. I feel like we actually didn't get that much out of her, and it kind of broke my the streak or like my expectation of like after the arc, we know a lot about the antagonist. We know a lot about Percy. We know a lot about the Shepherd. Sub Rosa was left a mystery. If it, like we talked about her backstory, she seems like she would know a lot of shit.
She would know a
Uh,
lot of shit, and that's the thing. Usually at the end of the arc, the interlude we get is from the perspective of the villain of that arc, but we didn't get that for her. And I mean, they talked a little bit about her history during, but they also did that for I feel like people like Reverend Maurer, and we still got his whole chapter.
yeah, so it makes me think this is not the last we'll see of Sub Rosa. She will be part of a bigger flashback later. Can't really know for sure who. I'm gonna guess like maybe uh Hales, because I feel
Yeah.
like we have to get a Hale backstory in this story because
Oh,
he's such an
yeah.
interesting character. Um, what are some other notable things about this arc?
Oh,
So
Gordon got a crush.
yeah, so Shipley's introduction is so jarring, where it's like this is like horrifying. People are just like getting killed left and right. This is a very tense situation, and Shipley's like comic reliefy when we meet her. So I thought that was interesting.
She's extremely standoffish because she knows about all of the shit going on out in the halls, but they're like, look, the experiment we're doing today, we planned it like 4 months ago. I don't care. Like, we can't put this shit off. We can't.
Wild, wild.
She's just so
It,
standoffish to Sai, and he fucking hates it. And he's like, Gordon, of all times to get your first crush, you had to do it now. And of all people, it had to be her.
it's so good. Yeah, she's it's very cute. Man, Gordon is very interesting. By the way, up to where you are, what experiments do you know like what they actually did or what they actually are? So we talked about Jamie. Do you know what the deal with Saya is yet?
So, what I've heard about the Wyvern Project is that there is a type of chemical that it seems like it's just kind of used regularly by Academy students and workers, where it's a chemical that kind of temporarily heightens things like perception and focus and stuff. And it sounds like Sai's project was to find like the absolute upper limit the human body can take from this chemical or something.
Right, and which since you've started a little bit of arc 4, that's also our next antagonist deal. She's
Yeah,
basically to the same level as Sai, but an adult.
which is like holy shit.
Horrifying thought. And then what do we know about Helen so far?
Helen, I don't know. She was grown in a vat by Ebot, and
That
I don't know. She can control her body and stuff. So I don't.
they do mention like she's weaker than Sai technically. At doing like normal human things if she wasn't doing like her body contortion stuff.
That's the thing. She technically beat Mary in Arc One, so I had labeled her as one of like our combat lambs. But it seems like it's she mostly just won that fight because of the contortion. It's not like she's a seasoned
Which
fighter.
So she definitely is. She maybe is like the combat lamb, but like she needs to get in position, and once she does, she just auto wins. That
Yeah.
like she's very good when she gets there, but she's not like remarkable aside from her weird acting. This character is very goofy. I expect to also get a lot from her in the future. Because she's obviously the one. I would say she's also the comic relief lamb compared to the others. As much as you can be
Yeah,
in a story like this.
Sai notices her very often because very deliberately this like innocent little girl routine is something that it is a show that she is putting on. She is fundamentally not human. She doesn't experience the things the way I guess we would normally, I suppose. So
Yeah.
anytime she's acting cutesy size, like that is an image she's putting on for the world. There's one moment in arc 3 where the situation is like especially bad. And I think it's when they're about to enact their plan to kill Sub Rosa, which was like I think dropping her many
Yeah.
stories to the bottom of the barrels.
Well, it was like dropping Shipley, and then like she would reach out to
Oh
Shipley, and
yeah.
then they would drop Sub Rosa.
And so right before they're about to enact this plan is probably the most dire things have ever been. Like Jamie's bleeding on the ground, and Helen's like, "Oh, this will be fun." And Sai internally in his head is he's like, "Okay, I know she is kind of curating this like cute little girl persona to do, but I need to talk with her after this and be like, for the persona you're going for, that's not the right time to do it. Like even your persona wouldn't say that in this moment." Um,
That's there's so many layers of knowing a person to get to
oh,
that point where
I
it's like
know.
he's not like she's just weird or like judging that fact. He's just like, let's workshop your fakeness
That's
a
the
little
thing.
bit.
It's like there's it's knowing it's a fake personality, and then there's like knowing the fake personality you're going for, and you didn't quite hit it. So like we can tweak that. We can tweak that.
Yeah.
But no, it was really interesting, and they end up getting Sobrosa to fall using Shipley as bait, um, which I don't know. It was hilarious. I think Sai got some satisfaction out of doing that because he's like, "Fuck this lady."
Fuck Shipley. Um. Okay, so I got like a couple of like points, not necessarily arc 3 related. Have you noticed how much like hand holding and like kissing and hugging there is with the kids? Like it's such a common thing
They're
that
very,
is
very close. And I first noticed it with Mary, because Sai does it with Mary more than others, I think, which could be a little bit of a crush, but it's not just with Mary. Like, he'll platonically hold friends with Jamie walking down the hall. They love each other.
so it's like there's also a lot of like emphasis on like don't look up my skirt, tee hee.
Teehee.
Uh and I feel like what's happening here because it's become it's so frequent. And it hasn't really been in other Wild Bow stories. I feel like there's an element of innocence to the kids in like, and this hand holding is like their only way of expressing it. This childhood like touchiness that only really makes sense when you're like small kids, and they really hold on to that as a way to communicate and show affection for each other. And I just thought it was interesting and a way to kind of contrast them with the how adults they are in conversations.
No, yeah, because if two adult characters hold hands, I think usually after mentioning that there comes an explanation on what these two characters holding hands means or their relationship to each other. But here it kind of usually is just stated matter of factly, like Sai, it's a tense moment, and I reach down and I grab Jamie's hand, and there's nothing else you really have to say.
Another point of it, and like I think we've talked about this before, is their nonverbal communication that they do
Oh,
like throughout the story is always really fun.
like one of them will just like hold a hand up behind their back or something, or Jamie, like Sai will look across the room at Jamie, and Jamie blinks twice, and Sai's like, "Okay, I'm on the right track," or something like that.
Hmm. Uh, in arc 2, so we find out that Sai almost botched what Hale's plan was because he just walked in and it's like, I'm gonna puff my chest and show what's his face, who's boss, the head of the department or whatever. And Hale tells him after that, hey, if you didn't do all that and get your stupid badges, I was gonna try to revive one of the projects and you almost jeopardized that. And the guilt that Sai feels, like there is none of that Sai snark. He just like becomes a sad puppy and genuinely feels self-conscious about himself for almost botching that, and I thought that was very interesting for Sai.
It's one of those rare moments that even he can recognize he might have pushed things a little too far. And so it's kind of a miracle that both they and the professor ended up getting what they wanted anyway.
Yeah, they really threaded the needle, but also like what they did was pretty impressive, stopping the riot.
Also, by the way, Sai did all that to get these like hall pass badges so they could go wherever they want whenever they want. And he's like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna be such a menace with this thing," and he loses it like at the very start of Arc 3. I think one of the convicts takes it because they're like, "Oh, that would be useful," and Sai's like, "Oh my god, I need to get that back. I need to get that back."
He does get it back, I'm pretty
Okay,
sure.
okay.
But it's just funny. Yeah, and then like even then, like he's relegated to being in the bowels for like the next couple months. Um, Speaking of the time skip, you said it was interesting there was a time skip. I think it's interesting because the passage of time is directly depowering what makes the lambs good. Because you
Yes.
mentioned they are a covert unit of kids. Gordon, especially, is becoming a young adult. Like, what's going to happen to these kids as they get older if that's where the story is going? If, like, we are passing a lot more time than I thought we would. I'll throw that out there. So we might get to the point where these people become like young adults, and then what happens to them if
Yeah,
they're
like
even alive?
going through the changes of life. It's just I don't know, like Sai kind of reflects and he's like, the reason we are so good at what we do and we can communicate non-verbally so well is because we've done so many of these intense jobs together where we have to think on the fly and do this stuff. But he's like, the fact that we've been just down in the bowels, just asking questions to people for 6 months means we haven't been doing stuff like that. We haven't been honing our skills. We haven't been getting closer. And then, so yeah, when he sees Gordon get a crush on someone for the first time, he's like, we're at that age where like our body chemistry and even our brains are changing, and he's like, we're not around each other to adapt for it. And so he's like, are we even still going to be this well-oiled machine that we were just an arc ago?
Will we indeed? That's a good question. I have a lot of worry for these kids. We learn a little bit more about the expiration dates, not directly, but we know it goes Gordon first.
Yes.
1 year, no, yeah, Gordon first, and then 1 year after that, Jamie, and then second to last is Mary, and Sai is last. So I think we're missing what Helen in the middle.
Yeah, I think Sai was very sad about the fact that he was the last one.
Oh yeah, still very interested. Like I feel like the Wyvern project still has some sort of like side objective that is going to be troublesome because I posited in the start of the story that we were going to go with a Blade Runner vibe, where the idea of the Wyvern project was to keep the other projects in check if need be.
Yeah.
I feel like that hasn't been substantiated in these two arcs, but you know, I feel like something along that vibe it just feels like the perfect way to torture Sai. And if the author is Wildbow, I feel like that's always on the table. Shout outs to Blake, who by the
Hmm.
end of the story is not himself anymore. So we'll just say that. So I feel like that's definitely a valid way to push the story if they want in some way.
Well, I know we hit a lot of the broad strokes. This is a rare time when you're ahead of me in a Wild Bow story. But like I said, I've gotten to do a little bit of Arc 4, so I'm very interested there. I didn't know if there was any other notes you had for 2 or 3.
Not particularly. I had a question for you.
Yes.
Um, who do you want an interlude of most that we've met so far? Because we're not getting interlude for a protagonist, which I think is interesting. We have to get more of their backstory specific at some point, I feel. But there's also like the scientist involved in the story, other like antagonists like Sub Rosa we didn't get like a backstory for.
That's the thing. We're only really getting Sai's perspective. If we got one from the Lambs, I feel like I would want to see. I feel like I would want to see Sai through Gordon's eyes. I feel like that'd be fun.
Oh, that would be so good.
Well,
I want
because like, oh my god, the others have to get so sick of his shit.
that would be very fantastic. Oh, dude. So I mentioned Jamie was my favorite at this point. I think Gordon actually becomes my favorite in the next two arcs. He is deeply interesting. Which is not where I thought we would go. I can't even remember the fucker's name, but Regardless, I want Lillian interlude really bad
Yes.
because what the fuck is her deal? Actually, like, let's step. We still don't really know. Like, she's like a student who is in this program that puts her in life and death missions with the other experiments. Like, how did she get here? Why is she really here? Like, where does she come from? Where does she go? I really, really want to know more about her. Which she's kind of an unassuming character, but I think the more you think about the pieces around her, the more she sticks out as an oddity. And I hope we get it. It'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
because everybody at the academy is usually there because they have some ambition, whether that's just for power or like they have a specific project in mind that they would like to make, whether it's for good reasons or bad reasons. So I'm like, what is Lillian's ambition really? It's I don't like it's not just a generic be a doctor, right? I don't think there's anybody at the academy who has just been generic. Yeah, I wanted to be a doctor. It's usually all they had something they wanted to accomplish. So that's interesting.
It it really feels like she's just on an internship, and this is the wildest internship you could
Unpaid
possibly
fucking
get in.
internship where you're life against death. Now,
Incredible.
for chapters I'd want to see, if we're not counting the lambs, the number one choice is obviously Hale.
For sure, for sure. And I think that's almost guaranteed.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah. Um I feel like you, we are due for maybe also a flashback arc in the middle of the story. I don't know if that
Oh,
works.
we can see them when they're all little.
I would be interested in like a couple chapters that really go into the creation of each one of them, like a little bit more about the Caterpillar project, even though we know more, how they met. The thing is, we're getting piecemeal of how they met and their past just through conversations and a couple of like flashbacks here and there, and we continue to get a few. So I don't know if you will, but I would be interested in it for sure.
But yeah, these were pretty cool two arcs. I think there were some littler notes I had, but we hit all the main broad strokes. There were some funny like when I'm going through this book, I write down a lot of these comedic note moments. Like there's one I'm looking at right here where I think when they were trying to figure out what to do with Sub Rosa, they found these like glass containers, and one of the containers had a gas containing like a flesh-eating virus, and
Yeah,
the rest of them were just filled with water vapor. And it turns into this whole big argument between Sai and Jamie, where Sai's like, "I want to hold the flesh-eating gas container," and Jamie's like, "You're not gonna fucking do it." And Sai's like, "I'm not gonna use it in a way that'll hurt us. Why can't you just trust me?" And Jamie's like, "It's not even about trust. You could just accidentally drop it. I just don't think we should do it." And it's like paragraphs and paragraphs, and eventually Helen's like, "Just shut the fuck up and hand it to me. You guys carry the water ones." And the instant Sai picks up one of the water vapor ones, he drops it and it crashes to the ground. And he's just like, "Shut up." And JV's like, "I didn't even say anything."
that is you were mentioning how Sai is entertaining to be like to be in his head as like the
Yeah.
point of view character, and that's always just an interesting part of books and like kind of written stories is how your protagonist's voice really shapes the tone of the story. And this tone is a lot more whimsical and jokey, despite the setting being as grim as always for a Wild Bow story, because Taylor's always in her own head and like trying to take mental logic leaps to justify her actions, and Blake is just getting beaten down by the world and he just wants to be left alone, man. So both of those vibes are reflected in the tone of the story, and then Sai's cheekiness and his naughtiness kind of colors the tone of Twig as well.
That's the thing. For a long time before I started Twig, I was actually a little apprehensive about it because Wildbow's tone can already get so grim. And learning that he wrote a story where the whole setting is biopunk, I'm like, oh my god, that's got to be about as grim as it gets. But I don't know. I'm usually this story feels so much more comedic than his other ones, despite the fact that the setting is so much more horrifying. So I don't
Yeah,
know. It's
I
just really
agree.
cool. Well,
Uh,
I don't have much more. So for people listening, like we said earlier, Willer's already on arc 5. I'm already on arc 4. We probably won't wait as long before doing another one of these, especially because I think each of us just started vacationing for Christmas, so I gotta kill time.
yeah, I'll be doing some drives. Yeah, man. Maybe I will start doing some Twig again, but I'm putting the onus of you to catch up to me quick because I don't want
Do
to get
that.
too ahead of you, but I also don't want to. squander this time and not do some Twig. I was itching for it the other day. I was like, where are we going, man?
I don't know. We were very
But
excited because whenever we put out our kind of like Arc One analysis, we had a very very good reception to that. I was pleased to see how many people came out to show love for Twig because Twig discussion just isn't out there in high volume. So
any Wild Bows story discussion isn't really out there in high
no.
volume, I would say.
So in any case, if you're still here, thank you for listening, and we hope to have a Arc 4 and 5 up pretty soon.
Yeah, let's not however many months this took.
Yeah.
Maybe when we get some time next month, that would be great.
But
I
thank
believe
you,
in us.
thank you, Willer, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.